This is the Paul Gough audio experience, business lessons for physical therapists. My name is Paul Gough, former professional soccer physical therapist turned successful business owner and best-selling author from the UK. Each week, we answer your questions and bring you an inspiring story or person from the global physical therapy community. This show is dedicated to sharing with you everything you need to know to become hugely successful in private practice. Thanks for joining me today. Now let the class begin. Tagging you into a Facebook shared post. So we're off, Macy. If you want to just check that we're beaming everywhere across all of the social channels. We're going to do another fantastic episode of the podcast. Let's bring this up on my page so I can see who joins us. 1 minute. Right. All right. I'm going to put that there. Gotcha. Right, so let's get into it. Welcome everybody to another episode of the podcast. Another fabulous interview is lined up. We are quite literally, we're live from Orlando, and we're just back from a fantastic weekend. We've just rocked Clearwater. I think it's fair to say we took the crew, the roadshow, if you like. We went from London 2 weeks ago across the ocean. We had a big event in London at Kensington, and then we took the crew on the road and had a fantastic event in Clearwater. It's safe to say the events are back, and it's every time that we've run these events, we felt the excitement, the anticipation getting bigger and higher. And the one that we held at the weekend was just nothing short of incredible. So I keep saying this all the time. If you're a fan of the podcast, you're a fan of the YouTube stuff we put out, you're just a fan of the books, anything that we're doing, you've got to get in the game. The game really is the events, and that's what we're here for, to put on some fantastic shows. We had 100 in the room and another 30 or 40 still online at the big event in Clearwater, which was the prequel, the last event that we'll put on before the big massive private practice market alive, which takes place here again in Orlando, October 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. If you have missed the announcement, let me just run it by you. We announced Mr. X. It wasn't Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter. It wasn't Daniel. It is somebody bigger, I think, and significantly more relevant to us as business owners. It is Damon John. None other than Shark Tank's Damon John will be the headline speaker. And people ask me when we put the picture on stage of Damon, is he going to be in person? It's like, of course he is. That's the whole point. Like, he's going to be there. He's going to be live. He's flying from LA or wherever it is that he lives across the ocean to come. From wherever he lives, he's going to come and join us in Orlando. I'm getting some interference here. I don't know whether it's your mic. Just check that, Alex. Just somebody. There's like a wind, something that I'm hearing something. Just check. It might just be touching your face. But we're going to be live in Orlando, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th in what is set to be the biggest private practice growth conference of 2022. So head over to ppmlive22.com. Damon John is the live headline speaker. If you don't know who he is, check him out. Just Google him. Shark Tank. He's close to a billionaire, started multiple businesses, and he's just a really fun, inspiring guy. We've also got James Lawrence, regarded as the toughest human on the planet. He's ran 50 iron triathlons in 50 days in 50 states. So we've got something to inspire you, and we've got something to really get into a business conversation lesson from somebody who is uber successful. So come and join us. There'll be 300 tickets are flying out the door. Right now is the lowest price ticket you'll ever get. The prices rise regularly. And if you're listening to this live, ppmlive22.com is where you can head over and book your lowest price ticket before the Damon John price rise kicks in. So that's the big announcement. That's what we've been up to. I'm currently in Orlando, and I'm headed to a flight tonight back to England. I'm going home for a few days to pick up my boys, and then I'm flying to Spain for 2 weeks on vacation. So I do a lot of airport these days, which is good. You know what? I'll never, ever, ever take airports for granted again, and just the ease of now being able to travel and jump on and off planes, no masks and no COVID tests and all this stuff that obviously we had to go through, rightly so. Just interesting. I'm just going to throw this one out there. Don't hold me to this, but if you're listening to the podcast and you're in the Southern Hemisphere, and you are the other side of the world, anywhere close to Australia or New Zealand, we are tentatively thinking about putting on an event in in Australia, in Sydney, in January next year, January of 2023. So if you're listening to this and you're all interested in a 10 or 15 person event over in Sydney, in January of 23. I'm looking for an excuse to come and watch some cricket and come and say hello to some people in Australia. Reach out to the team and tell me that you're interested. Paul@paulgough.com. Just shoot an email and we'll give you more details on the back of that. Maybe he's in Sydney next year. So anyway, that's what's going on. I've got a fantastic guest. I've got Alex Earl, who's got a wonderful story that we're gonna dig into today. Alex is just an amazing guy, an amazing practitioner, amazing business owner. He's a kindred spirit. He realized that the place that he'd start his business in, he didn't necessarily want to live there for whatever reason, and decided to up sticks and take his family a few thousand miles away, and continue to run his business. So he's the epitome of everything I teach and everything that I believe in. That you can own the trains, but you don't necessarily have to be the person driving the trains every single day. So Alex is another one of our amazing mastermind members, CEO members that has had incredible success over the last few years, and we're excited to dig into the story of how he did it all. So Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
Welcome. How long was it since I did your podcast? How long ago would that have been?
I think it was two years ago.
Incredible.
Crazy to think about it. Yeah,
Incredible.
about 2 years ago.
Time flies. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get in. Obviously, I've got some questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what type of practice, and just generally how life is going for Alex.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of my journey and my story, and you and your staff certainly play a vital role in the outcome that my family are currently living. But yeah, just a quick background. I'm a chiropractic physician, and I grew up, born and raised in the Chicagoland area. Went to undergrad university, played college soccer there. Went to chiropractic school right after undergrad. Started a practice right after chiropractic school. But while I was actually in chiropractic school, I started an education entity with one of my professors, and so I kind of had two part-time jobs that equaled a whole right out of school. And I started, actually, let me back up. As I graduated, I actually had a couple of agreements with local chiropractic offices to go work there, but I still had this itch for the education side because I'm not really a big fan of the education industry. So I wanted to kind of get my foot in the door with the education side. And so
Yeah.
I had this passion for the education where I could see the future of chiropractic and physical therapy education, and I wanted to keep that going. And at the same time, I wanted to be a practitioner and be world class as a practitioner. And so I kind of had my foot in two rooms, so to speak. And so imagine me going to some interviews at some chiropractic positions that were available, and I said, hey, I've got this education branch. I'd love to work in your office, but I think I can only commit to working on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And
Yeah.
as you can imagine, an owner just looking
That
at their,
answer
like,
well.
we want you to work Monday through Friday and every other
Yeah.
Saturday. And I was like, oh, that's not going to work for me. So with no other option on the table, or so I thought, I opened up our clinic. And to this day, 7 years later, we're only open on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We've
Yeah.
only ever seen patients on those days. And so I was able to then do weekend seminars, do the education business, and have a private practice clinic at the same time. And it came with its own growth, learning curve, and heartaches and challenges and difficulties. But it there's there's an interesting paradigm in that, and this kind of is a nice segue into how I met you, which is I come from the functional rehab world where we don't treat the site of pain, and yet
Yeah.
as soon as somebody gets out of pain, the business side of chiropractic and physical therapy just discharges them.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute here, we're teaching one thing and we're practicing a different tune.
I love it. Right, we're going to get into your story quite heavily, but I've got some fun questions. What makes
Go
you
for
laugh?
it.
Let's find out a little bit more about Alex. What makes you laugh the most?
I don't know, a good awkward scenario, like really just kind of, I laugh at everything. I laugh at myself. I laugh at reality, when people just, when they can't see maybe, what's right in front of them, but you can, that makes me laugh. I have a dry sense of humor. I appreciate Australian and British, dry wit. Um, I, I really, and I'm not Vaughn, Ben Still. I'm not that kind of a, humor guy, but I am, like a Ricky Gervais kind of humor, like that. That to me, like when you're driving home after watching a movie or seeing a show and you're laughing still, but you're processing what was said an hour ago. That's my kind of
Yeah,
humor. You're like, dang,
I love it.
that was fun. That was funny.
Well, if you like Ricky Gervais, the other guy in England that you need to check out is a guy called Peter Kay. Funnily
Okay.
enough, me and my staff had a discussion about this the other night. Who would be the funniest comedian to kind of make it big in England? And it's always Ricky Gervais or a guy called Peter Kay. So check him out.
I will.
What's
I
your current
will.
what's your current obsession?
Current obsession. Well, I don't know why that's
Rapid
catching me off
fire. These
guard.
are called
Yeah,
rapid fire.
yeah.
Bang. Come
You
on.
know, I'm slowly becoming more and more competent as a homeowner. I'm doing more and more around the house things by choice. So I'm learning how to be a little bit better, carpenter and do things around the house with a little bit more fine
I'll
accuracy
take that one.
than, yep.
What's the one thing that you can never live without? Rapid fire. One answer.
My faith,
Describe yourself in 3 words.
loyal, honest, charismatic.
Best piece of advice you've ever been given.
Um, Gosh, the best piece of advice.
I'll come back.
Can I come back to
80,
come back to that one?
80s music or 90s?
Oh, 90s, come on.
All day.
Yeah.
Florida or California?
California.
What?
Yeah,
He's the first one to say that. New
really.
York or London? Yeah,
I've only been to Heathrow, so I'm gonna have to go with New York for the food.
Harry Potter or Mickey Mouse?
Harry Potter.
Shopping online or a shopping mall? Do you like the experience or the convenience?
I like the experience. We took our kids to a mall the other day. They had never been to a mall. Can you believe that?
Incredible.
Yeah,
Well, it's the reality of life these days.
yeah.
Hire or fire?
Well, I'd like to think that I'm better at firing, believe it or not, but I think that I enjoy the hiring process.
And last one, who is the politician that you would most like to slap?
To slap Joe Biden.
It's always my favorite question to particularly in America. You ask an American a politician question, it's like, there we go. Right, I love it. So let's go. Podcast questions. Let's get into it. We're going to talk about you and the business. So tell us about the business, where you're at today, and why you got started.
Yeah, this is kind of the fun part of it, right? So I'm in private practice in Carroll Stream and Illinois. I come up to the office approximately once a month. My family and I live in Southeast Tennessee, so I drive 650 miles or I fly, to come up to the office once a month. I see
Yep.
one patient. She's a VIP patient who has worked her way up the ascension ladder, and so she's the only one that's on my schedule. We have 2 other, providers that are on staff here that do a majority of the treatment. We have a full-time, customer service representative, and we have 2 independent contractors that are personal trainers that rent the office from us during our downtime.
Love it. What about so where you're at today? Just outside of Nashville. How far are you away
So
now?
it's outside of Chattanooga, so it's about 2.5 hours
Chattanooga.
outside. So I'm right on the border of Tennessee and Georgia, believe it or not.
Fantastic. So what was
Yeah.
the decision there then? What was the this is the bit I'm intrigued about. We've got this business in Illinois, and we now live in Chattanooga, just outside Chattanooga. What was the reason for that?
Well, we've got 4 kids. They're young, and we love being outdoors. And so it just, we love the experience of, we love the life of Tennessee. It's a very free, open, conservative. I say conservative in essence to conserve things, fiscally conservative. So just as the direction of a state,
Yep.
Illinois was kind of, had some warning signs there, but Tennessee, we had vacation there. We had visited there. We loved it. Really, really good community outside of Chattanooga. And there's tons to do outside. We're about an hour and a half away from the Great Smoky Mountains. We're an hour 45 from Atlanta. So geographically, it was a win. My father-in-law's from Lookout Mountain, which is very close to Chattanooga.
Yeah.
It's in fact part of it is in there. So we've been there. We're familiar with it, and it felt like home. We got plugged into a church down there. So there were a lot of things pointed in the direction of Tennessee, and this had just been cultivated over the last
Yeah.
5 to 7 years. And then when COVID hit, we kind of got all of our ducks in a row as a clinic and as a family, and we just kind of sat down and said, okay, what would it look like for us to live in a different state? And if
Yeah.
we moved to a different state, which states, would we move to? So I actually did a couple of reconnaissance trips. I went to Texas, I went to Oklahoma, and I did 1,000-mile road trip in Tennessee myself. And the place that felt like home for us and our family was Chattanooga.
Love it. So tell me, I'm interested in this then, because obviously I've been through this myself, where it's like, okay, Natalie, I've got this idea. Should we move to Florida? It's like, holy
Yep.
shit, like that's a big, that's a big jump. But I bet there's people listening to this podcast right now thinking, oh, I'm starting to think, I've got this business, but I want to live somewhere else. I've made some money now. I want to move to the coast. Or I want to move to the lake, or I want to live in a place that's more tax efficient, should we call it?
Mhm.
Is a
That's
little
right.
bit more sun, and slightly better lifestyle. But I don't want to give up this business and start again. So what was that thought process and decision like? How did that conversation go with your wife? Tell me a little bit about all of that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It did start with my wife. We sat down and we said, "Hey, the housing market is great. We could put our house on the market." Imagine just going and telling your spouse, "Hey, I think we should put our house on the market." And it's like, "Wait a minute, tell me why?" So my wife was extremely into hearing motives as to where my thought process was, and we prayed about it. We thought about it many, many nights. We're up late. Okay, what would kids look like? What would sports look like? Sports is a big a soccer was a big decision, believe it or not, on where
Yeah,
where our kids can get plugged in. So there's like multiple factors, and we just we realized that it is possible to do it. Obviously, I'm a member within your group, so I knew that it was possible for you to move from a different continent, right? So, you know, how hard would it be for us to just move a few states away? This
yeah,
guy moved from a different continent, which I think would be even. You got customs, you got passports, you got way more hoops to jump through. We're just moving states, 650 miles south. How hard can it be? And so when I realized the only thing that was keeping me back in Illinois within the clinic, which, my wife and I would consider like our fifth child. So
yeah,
how could we just step away from something we loved and built from scratch? And we realized it was my ego that kept us into the clinic. So if I were to step out, am I then giving up a part of my own identity? If my identity is found in the outcomes achieved with patients, which I like to think were exceptional, right? I'm good at what I do. If I step out, does that mean our patients would suffer? And the reality is that was purely my ego telling me that me getting 100% of the results with patients, if someone else comes in and gets 80, 85, 90, I would have to be okay with that. And when we
yeah.
ultimately landed on that decision of, yeah, we can hire people that are comfortable with us living in a different state and they get 80, 85, or 90% of the results that I would be getting, we're good. We can
Yeah.
make this work.
I love what you said there, and it's a great conversation to have. This is the ultimate barrier to freedom, isn't money. So business owners think that when I've made enough money, I'll retire, I'll move state, I'll move to Florida, I'll move to California, I'll move to Britain. One of the members in the program, I don't know if you know, Paul is, kind of lives in Texas right now, but is flirting with the idea of a home in the south of England. His wife is from England, and they've still got history there and heritage there, if you like. And they're on that cusp of, oh, could we, shall we? The business has done well enough that we could potentially now move across, and go and spend some time, 6 months of the year in the UK, 6 months in America. And what I find is that this is the dream for business owners. This is what we kind of wanted to do to get this choice and flexibility. But and I was just writing it down there. Most people are psychologically never ready to do it. So they are financially, fiscally ready to do it. There's money in the bank, there is an operation that makes enough money and so on, but they're just not psychologically ready to do it. And I think that's what you find with a lot of people. They are not truly free. So we kind of talk about this idea in business of freedom. We all want freedom. We all want freedom. We all want control, right? We give away control every day with the way we speak and the way we talk, and we blame everybody else for everything. And it's always the government's fault, and it's always some employee's fault. So business owners never feel in control because everything that they talk about is the thing that somebody else has done or hasn't done. And then the second thing that they want is freedom. But even if they get it fiscally, they don't get it psychologically. So they're never ready to do it. And I think that's what you've done there and why it's so fascinating. You became psychologically ready to make the move. It really isn't a fiscal decision for most. It's not that difficult to go live in another state, like you said, 600 mile away. I did it 3,500. Somebody's probably done it 12,000 from Australia to England. Like it just there's always somebody who'll beat you on that journey, if you like. The bit that needs mastering and understood is the am I mentally ready for it? And most people are not because it's the ego It's the ego in play. So tell me a little bit about the things that you learned then. So you decide to move, kind of get your head together with your wife, and you make a decision as a family that you think that it's better for you to raise your kids in another state. And I absolutely love that, because again, remember, the vehicle is business, and it's just a vehicle for a terrific life. It cannot be the mule. It cannot be the sorry, it is the mule. It cannot be the thing that is the addiction that keeps us stuck. You move. What did you learn about the move? What lessons did you learn? You had a nice business. You were making good money. What happened next? What went wrong? Inevitably.
Well, and I want to just preface this by saying that I I mapped out to our family and to my wife especially, who we even have inside of our marriage, we have different views of money, right? And so
Yeah.
like that poses a potential conflict. And I love what you said even on the weekend about, if you want your marriage to thrive, have a budget. And when we really got serious about our budget and our money, our marriage, go figure, our marriage improved. So it's like, yes, psychologically and financially, but I also mapped out, okay, what's worst case scenario and what's best case scenario. And if I could accept both of those scenarios, like I actually accepted well before the idea was ever put into place that it could totally fail. Like the
Yes.
business could close, and I've completely accepted it. And I've also accepted, if everything went exactly according to plan, how amazing the life would be with cash just flowing in and there's experiences. And I've accepted both bookends. So we're gonna land somewhere in between there, which means like we're good. And so when I started the conversation from that perspective, I felt completely detached from any outcome that the clinic could achieve without me, which
Fantastic.
was a very different place than I would have been 3, 4, 5 years ago, where I was so stuck in the business. I couldn't see any potential growth with the people, with the strategy, with the
Yeah.
execution of the strategy. I couldn't see any of it.
I think as well the biggest thing that I found was, for me, the business had a better chance of being successful if I was in a place that promoted um, positive thinking, my creativity, um, and ultimately allowed me to thrive. I think there's many people, and you probably had at the weekend on my sessions, the whole idea of protecting the creativity, the asset, the fountain of youth. I always call it, like, you're the fountain of youth in the business, right? Like, if this business is to stay youthful and energetic, and translated as spits out money and is a little bit of a cash machine for you. For that to happen, the owner of the business has to be in the right place. It has to be in the right frame of mind, has to have the right energy, the right optimism, the right conversations in order to be able to thrive. So I found the risk was actually minimal when I looked at it from that perspective. The biggest risk was staying in a place that I wasn't stimulated and wasn't going to enhance my career as a well, certainly wasn't going to enhance my creativity, and ultimately that was going to affect the business in the long term. So I kind of turned it around, from that way, that I had to go, because I knew in the end my enthusiasm and energy for the asset would win, for the business would win. What about the successes? Tell me a little bit about the successes that you've had then, since you've moved.
Well, I think I have to start off with the people, right? So even before we ever moved, I learned that, from you and from Simon and Cameron, just the coaches amongst your group, that, as a CEO, you have to be constantly recruiting, right? The recruiting switch never gets turned off within our business now. So we're constantly
Yeah,
getting top talent applied to work for us, even if we have jobs open or not. And so one of the things I learned is to set the expectations up front inside of the recruiting process. So I would interview people and say, "Hey, you look great on paper. Tell me what it will look like for your boss to live in a different state. Would you be okay with that? How do you manage communication with, someone?" And so I just would ask these questions. And if they said, "Oh no, I can't work in a place where my boss lives in a different state," I say, "Okay, thank you for your time. This job's not for you." And they did not get hired. Even if they looked amazing on paper, it just would not have worked on the grand scheme of things for the Earl family and the business.
yeah,
And so it was a buffer, it was a barrier. And if you're okay and you're comfortable with me and my family moving out of state, then you got hired. And so everyone on staff right now, for the most part, everyone on staff is okay with the Earl family living in a different state. And what we're
yeah,
seeing now is the work that we did for 2 years on recruiting. For 2 years, we recruited before this plan was ever put into effect. So to think that I could just in 30 days run an Indeed ad and get the perfect staff is just a fallacy. Like that's just not going to happen. So
yeah.
it just took longer to find the people that were cool with it.
I think as well, I love all of that. And what really has to happen is that you get cool with it, right? Life is really, really simple. And I find that insecure people attract insecure people. Unhappy people attract unhappy people, right? Broke people attract broke people. Like it's just an obvious wake up people kind of thing going on, right? Like if you're miserable, you're probably talking to miserable people. If
Mhm.
your life is a car crash, it's probably because you're taking advice from people whose life's a car crash. If your business is a mess, it's probably because like I don't know, right? Insert the blank. The people that you're asking for business advice or not at all, like you're not getting any good advice. So the business is a bit of a car crash because of your output. And I find in this situation, you'll attract people who are secure when you're secure about the decision that you've made, when you're really, really, really comfortable with that decision. I'm moving, I'm going, I'm absolutely positive this is right for me. People get behind it and they get in the tailwind of it. When they can feel that uncertainty and they're not quite sure if Alex has made the right decision or is Paul really sure? Does he really think we can do this? Like, oh shit, like this is a bit frightening, this is a bit, I don't know, right? All of a sudden the insecurities come out on the employees and they become the worst versions of themselves rather than the best versions of themselves. So really, biggest lesson in all of this, decide and commit. That's it. I'm in. We're done. We're going. We're going to rock and roll. We're either moving to another state and we're going to absolutely smash this up, or we're staying and we're going to stay and we're going to do it here. But what a lot of people do is they get torn halfway, and then they'll blame the employees for it. But actually, it's the other way around. They just couldn't get clearer in their own heads. And back to that conversation about control, why people never feel in control is they're always blaming somebody else. I don't trust my employees, so I can't leave. I'm not in control. If I just say screw it, I'm going. I'm in control. I'll deal with anything that happens. I'm good enough. I've got the Wi-Fi access these days. I can recruit from anywhere. I can hire from anywhere. I was talking to a guy yesterday who's hiring in South Africa, and the dude wants like 15,000, $20,000 a year for a top salesman. He's a top salesperson in South Africa, $20,000 a year that's going to answer the phone for a chiropractic clinic, believe it or not. And I'm just going, dude, like this guy gets it. He's comfortable. He's strong. He knows what he wants. He's willing to risk it. And as such, his payroll costs will come down by about $40,000. If he does that 3 times, there's over 6 figures in profit, right? Like that guy knows what he wants. He's comfortable, he's secure, he's confident. Somebody else is going, right? And I mentioned this on a podcast 2 or 3 months ago. Somebody else had that same podcast and went, oh, I couldn't do that. It wouldn't work for me. And I'm nervous and it's different and, blah, blah, blah. And as a result, all of the employees are nervous and don't feel good about themselves. Like everything starts with the business owner making that decision. Um, so what challenges have you run into it? There must be one or two.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd say right away, I was thinking about this. The two biggest challenges have been the financials, just making sure that you stay on top of your metrics and the numbers, which have been a struggle for 7 years to just understand cash flow projections, understand expenses and all that stuff, and so I've become hyper focused on the numbers because again, what you said this week, it was timely because I could see the performance of our staff starting to go down way before I could see changes of the numbers.
Yeah.
So I could almost predict where we were going to have tough conversations with staff. So I would try to preemptively get in front of those tougher conversations, almost to provide leadership, management, trying to set the expectations of like, hey, I see X, Y, and Z is slipping. Let's get out in front of it before we really lose control of this strategy or this topic. So I think it's two parts. One is the finances and the numbers. The second is the people. I realized that my weekly one-on-one with each one of our staff members, that wasn't enough of a touch point. They wanted a little bit more. They wanted access to me, even though they wanted to know that I didn't just abandon them. And I'm
Yeah.
out in Tennessee hiking trails, going to waterfalls, hiking, doing all the fun stuff. Like they wanted to know that I didn't just forget about them. And so by constantly checking in on them and really, giving a crap, just calling them up and say, hey, how's it going? How's your day going? You need me for anything? Hey, how are you? Go get a coffee, just something small that went a
Yeah.
long way because that's what I would do if I was physically here. I just kept that going as opposed to being like, all right, I'll see you in a month and then peaced out for the next 4 weeks.
Love it. Um, how did you get rid of the patients? How did you politely hand them over?
So how'd I get rid of them? It was
How
a
do you get them off your schedule? All of the fans that you built up over the years, how did you just say, "Look,
yeah.
politely, you're gonna have to see somebody else"?
So it was all in how we framed it. So I finished out all of the plans of care that we were going through with the patients that were on my schedule. And I presented them options for moving forward, right? Like a big fan of, telling your patient how to interact with you after their plan of care is up. We have a membership model, we have virtual appointments, we have remote coaching and workouts. We have all sorts of different options for you. You just have to pick one. And when I presented it to all of them, I realized, A, I don't have to physically be here, so some of them I still work with virtually, but
Yeah,
the ones that were patients that needed hands-on treatment, I let them know like, hey, it's been a pleasure working with you. There's going to be some changes. We're going to add some staff in here. You're not going to believe the person that we just hired. Like this person treats my wife, and I would just
yeah,
start talking up this person.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
like, hey, there's a good chance if you call in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I'm working on a couple of big projects at the moment. I'm actually writing a book and I'm working, so I would frame it as I have to step out of clinical practice for something big, but I'm
yeah,
not going to forget about you. You're also going to get this all-star that I've actually hired and nurtured and trained. And so they're going to know you, like when they come onto your schedule or when you get onto their schedule, you better believe you're not going to have to start this whole conversation all over again. So I almost did them a favor by getting out of the way. Like they thanked me for putting them on someone
yeah,
else's schedule.
yeah, yeah. I think
Rather
you're
than
right.
rather than just going, "Oh, yeah, I'm done treating. I'm
You
moving to Tennessee. Peace.
there's
Call us if you need us."
there's an argument to say that when a business owner knows that he or she is done and doesn't want to treat patients, you almost have an obligation to go, "I'm handing you over. I don't have the energy anymore. I don't have the enthusiasm. You deserve to be with somebody that, like, has all of that now." And I honestly felt like that. I don't think I've ever really spoke about it like that. But as I listened back on this, I think it was an obligation that I had to just say, look, it's not like you're not getting what you were getting 5 years ago from me because my head's not in it anymore. My head doesn't obsess over treatment for back pain or knee pain. It obsesses over Google, Facebook, email marketing, Infusionsoft, and all of these things that kind of lit the torch for me back then. So I wonder if that is a way out for anybody listening where there is almost an obligation to kind of hand over and you come from a place of genuine truth and just honesty and do you know what? Like this is the best place for you to go now. Like this is the up and coming kid, the new kid on the block. They were, the level I was at a few years back. I know you like what I do, but really what you want is an outcome and you want somebody to really, really give you everything that they've got. And as a business owner now with employees and responsibilities, I don't have that 100% focus on you like I used to. And I just think again, the more that I come up against situations that are a bit rough or a little tough or challenging or dealing with staff or patients, whatever, just tell the truth. And
Yep.
I think that actually is the truth. And again, back to confidence and control. How do you get control of your life? Just go into the conversations, tell the truth. That's exactly where I'm at. That's how I feel. It's up to you what you want to do next. I don't need to be any clever sales pitch. It's just, hey, listen, like I'm still around. Truth is I've got these other responsibilities. And the other truth is Steve or Sally or whoever, like they want you, like they want to give you their love and like let them, because I can't like I used to.
I
Um,
certainly had. I think to expand on that for a second, I think it was patient specific, right? Like
yeah,
if it's almost like a sales tactic, like what matters to you, and then that's the reason why I made this decision.
yeah,
So if you valued me, if you valued Alex, we're gonna have that real, honest conversation. If you value the new age soft tissue treatment, the outcome, then I'm gonna put our new, our staff I'm going to pump them up. I'm going to tell you, hey, you're going to want to go see her or him because like they know what to do. They're
yeah,
brand new out of school. They got all the latest concepts. But I think the second part was as I phased out all the patients off my schedule, anyone new never went on my schedule. They went on the other provider. So they never knew anything that was different. They didn't
yeah,
know the price point difference. They didn't know that I was unavailable. I mean, they see me all over the website, but they didn't know, they until I actually called them, they didn't know which provider was going to be treating them.
yeah.
So that was just a little tactic that we used.
What about leadership? Tell me a little bit about what have you learned there under the banner of leadership, leading people. And
Well,
how many staff do you manage now? Lead?
we got three on staff and two independents
Yeah,
for the clinic, and then I probably have a dozen or so people that I manage or lead on the education side.
yeah,
So it can be a lot. There's phone calls, a lot of But what I recommend and was challenged by you actually at one of our last CEO meetings was the farther you step away out of your
Yeah,
business, the more you have to pay or the more you have to pay attention.
yeah,
And so that's a big challenge has been in my leadership because when I'm working in close knit with you, we're on the same wavelength, like
yeah,
we can almost finish each other's sentences. You can read my body language. You can see like, oh, we got to do this, this, and this. When we're apart, what I have to actually pay attention to is, the nonverbals, the tone, even reading someone's tone in an email.
yeah,
I have to just take in all sorts of factors and then lead, which like I would like to think I'm a better leader than manager. Like
yeah.
I think that's just in my nature. So I can cast the vision and I can really drive, everyone towards it. But management of like just making sure that people do their job, I feel like that's been one of my biggest struggles is to make sure that they're actually doing the job that I hired them to do.
I agree, and it's a great phrase. The further you are away, the more that you will pay. And as the business gets bigger, you get further away from certain divisions, certain people that once you could inspect regularly. That I found the further I get away from, I've got a marketing division, I've got a finance division now. CFO has got its own team of 5 or 6 people. I've got the marketing division, then I've got the sales division. I've got the physio business, I've got the property business. You're, I get further from the source of all of these things, and it costs me more because I need somebody more reliable. You need to compensate differently because of it, and that's just a factor of kind of what happens as you grow your business, as you grow your companies. Your your mindset is very right there when you think about that, and that's for anybody listening, that sometimes you're going to have to pay a bit more. If you're not very good at marketing, you'll have to pay a bit more. If you're good at marketing, like you might not have to pay as much because you're in that division. Like if I wasn't in the marketing division, I'd probably need 2 more people, so it would cost me more money. But I'm the chief marketer. Still, I've got a great team around me, but I'm still the kind of head of marketing. So I don't have to pay as much in that division. But I'm not in sales, so I've got to pay somebody to go and run that division. I'm not in the finance division, so somebody's going to go and run that for me. Like it costs me more the less involvement I have in it. But that's fine, that's part of the evolution of the business. And that's the other one I've learned, that as you do get further away, you do lose a little touch with some people, and it's a little, oh, sorry, I haven't really given you much attention the last 6 or 8 weeks, and it's not deliberate. It's just that more people are coming into your life, and more people are kind of asking for things, and priorities change as business grows, and you just have to do your best to correct and play sometimes to say, look, let's get our relationship a little tighter. But then equally, sometimes you've just got to go, I can't sustain this relationship. You have to have that with somebody else. Your manager needs to have a relationship with you, and I'll have the relationship with your manager, and that's how we have to play this. um Couple of questions about CEO, and we'll wrap it up. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in CEO? What's you've been in the CEO program for a year now. What's the best lesson you've learned in there?
Probably the best lesson is like we don't all have our crap together. And so learning from other people's mistakes at different phases of business has been priceless, right? So, Brad might be going through something and I might not understand exactly, what he's going, but then it will hit me 3 to 6 weeks or 3 to 6 months later and I realize, oh, this is exactly what he was talking about. So really the biggest lessons have been in just how valuable the group is. I know it kind of sounds cliche, but I can't imagine what I would not have learned, or maybe said differently, what I would have missed out on if I wasn't in the room for those 2 days, for those, 4 to 6 times that we've met. So as cliche as it sounds, like I could sit in that room for 2 days and not share anything about my business and walk away and feel like
Yeah,
almost exhausted from just listening to all of the things that everyone is discussing, if that makes sense. Like I'm
undoubtedly.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm very much an internal processor. I give Amy a hard time because she's an external processor. I could sit in that room for 2 days and not say a thing and get a tremendous amount of value and input from those 2 days.
I always think people mistake the idea of mistakes, where they'll say, you learn from your mistakes, learn from your mistakes, learn from your mistakes, learn from your mistakes, right? That's kind of like what your parents would say, as you grow up, Alex, make sure you learn from your mistakes, right? So you kind of have this mindset, and a lot of people listening to this will have that mindset where it'll be, I'll learn from my mistakes and I'll figure this out the hard way, and I'll make some mistakes and I'll learn and I'll pick myself up. And I disagree slightly. I think the best way to learn from mistakes is to learn from somebody else's mistakes. Like, and that's really what business growth, I think, is about. That my obsession for a lot of years has been to pay people for their advice, but really what I'm paying is for their lessons. They're paying the things that they've done, and they say, look, this is going to slap you in the face. Like I'm laughing, like, because you're going to hit you. This is going to hit you. This people thing, like, she's quitting. I'm telling you now, like, she's going. You're going to get screwed over. And I'm like, no, 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 that won't happen to me. Like, no, it fucking will. Believe me. Like, eventually you'll trust me. Like, this stuff repeats itself, and it's so bloody obvious when you've been through it. And I think that's what you're alluding to there, is that you get to learn from other people's mistakes, and whether or not you're ready for that at that point. What I love about CEO, it's that you get to learn a lesson that you might not even be ready to take yet, but at some point in the next 6 months or 12 months, it's going to slap you in the face. And then there's least like I've seen this before. I've got a bit of an answer for it. I kind of know where I'm headed with it. And as such, you become more about anticipating things rather than getting slapped in the face and what most people are in business, which is reactionary. It hits them, boom, what do I do? Oh shit, I'm in trouble. Because you're in trouble, you make another mistake, and on and on and on and on. This thing goes. What about the whole thing? Since obviously you and I have been working together for a few years, what's the best thing you've learned since you've been in the Planet Paul world?
Um, I I think I've thought about this almost every day since you said it to me, and not to. I know I'm on your show, and but I genuinely mean this, which is I went to your sales boot camp in Orlando,
Yeah.
2018, I think it was,
Yes. Yeah.
and I don't know if it's a sales tactic, but the way that it was delivered, it was with the genuine nature that I would consider myself to be in the same category of. So, and I don't know if you remember this, but I'm on the fence. Do I join the 4% club? Do I not? Do I do I call my wife and say, hey, I didn't just pay a couple grand to come down here for a sales boot camp class. I'm now going to spend even more to be a part of this mastermind group. And so I got on the phone with her and I just said, like, I think this is the group for me. No other chiropractic. Let me just back up. No other chiropractic group understood the problems that I was going through like Paul does. And it's because what they're trying to sell me on is chiropractic coaching or chiropractic itself, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's not me though. Like I'm not a walking billboard for chiropractic. I'm in the people business. And so there's a huge disconnect. Every coaching call I went on with a potential coach was telling me, get in front of the parent teacher association. Once you get the mom, you get everyone. Where's your x-ray unit? I'm like, I don't have an x-ray unit. So I was just kind of a renegade when it came to chiropractic and business that way. And sure, consider how I treat to be very similar to a physical therapist. I'll sleep at night just fine. But going to your sales boot camp, you you came up, you're answering my questions, and I think you just knew what I was going through, and you're like, look, I give you permission to be successful. And I like have been thinking about that ever since you said that, because I was really holding myself back on being successful. Now, for me, I've thought about what you even meant by that. What is success? For me, success is I have enough. I don't need anything more and I don't need anything less. I have enough. I've got an incredible wife. I've got four amazing kids. I live in a beautiful place in Tennessee. I could die now and I would be a happy guy. I mean, I don't plan on it, right? But I have enough. And for me to want to make it to $1 million, that would just be gravy, right? Like I do think I could push this engine towards 1 million. I do. But that would be gravy. That's not
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not, and that's, I have enough, right? So when you ask, how has this helped me? Well, you instilled this sense of belief in me that I already had, but was like suppressing for maybe insecurity or fear of failing. So when you gave me permission to succeed, like that deeply resonated with me, because I thought, well, how come I can't tell myself that like you can do this? Like you can like I give you, and just that phrase, I give you permission to be successful. Like I didn't go through, a midlife crisis or anything, but it impacted me to really get things going. Like, if you want to be successful, if you want to have enough, here's what you need to do. And this guy
Yeah.
believes in you. This guy believes it's possible. And if I look back in my life, anyone that has ever instilled belief in me has gotten a 10 times, result or performance from me. Right. So any coach that's ever instilled, kind of the hard ass, be tough, just run them till they puke. Like, I kind of tune them out. I'm like, this is not for me. Why do I need to do 100 sprints and puke? But if you tell me, if Paul asked me to run through a brick wall, I probably would, because that guy believes in me and he believes it's
Yeah.
possible. So it's a
Yeah.
very different different mindset when it comes to and I didn't pose I believe it was genuine belief that this guy can be successful. He just needs to get out of his own way.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love it. I do remember the conversation very well at the end of the day. No, it's really what I do. It's my my principal job. I provide marketing and various things, but it's really to help people believe in themselves a bit more, which I write about a lot. I genuinely, if I could invent a cure, a potion for a lack of belief in this world, like that's the thing that we really need a vaccine for, a lack of belief and just I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it work, regardless of what anybody else thinks. I'm going to go and do this thing, and screw you if you don't believe me, type of thing. I'm doing it anyway, and I don't really care if you give me an applause at the other end or you chastise me for doing it. I'm doing it anyway. And I think that's what you find in the PG world. It's a collection of people who have that kind of attitude, and it's a bit of a renegade and a screw you to all of the rest of the boring, miserable kind of practitioners out there who are all just plodding along and doing their own little thing, living in their own little misery, and always looking at somebody like you, thinking, "Oh, well, I'd like to be like Alex, and I'd like to move, and I'd like to have my family and raise them in a place that I've always dreamed of, and I can get my other business going, and I can make good money, and I can be very happy, and I can help people." Like, just even speaking like that, there's a new energy when you talk and describe like that versus where most people are, which is just whinging about Medicare or another member of staff's left or I can't find a front desk pet. It's just like, oh, piss off. Like just go and boss somebody else. You know what I mean? Not that we don't go through all of those challenges, but that's their default. Like they don't really plan on doing it any they speak. They're just things that you and I would, all right, suck it up, let's deal with it. How are we going to do it? Medicare drop or whatever. Okay, let's deal with it. Patient, somebody quits, cool, let's rock and roll. How do we get over that? And I think that's really what's so special about the community that that we're building together, if you like. So thank you for that, Alex. Where can people find out more about you? You've got lots going on with your education and your online classes and your courses. Tell us a little bit about that and where people can find out more about what you do.
Yeah, we've got, the education entity is called Midwest Rehabilitation Institute. You can find us online at mwri.co. That's not .com, it's just .co. We got online classes, we've got in-person dry needling, acupuncture, all through the musculoskeletal lens. So it's perfect for Paul Gough world. People that are part of Planet Paul who want to integrate expert clinical practice with expert business practices. We do talk about business, sales, thing in our courses because it's almost impossible, right? And I didn't mention this a minute ago, and I'll just quickly say, which is my functional rehab journey as a chiropractor, trying to be the best rehab oriented chiro. I found myself in the motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral psychology textbooks, and as I was reading through all of the questions that you're supposed to ask patients about facilitating change in their own environment. Motivational interviewing is wonderful, X factor within our practice. And we talk about that in a lot of our classes, but I realized the same exact questions that Paul teaches in his sales, it's like, how do you give a crap about a patient? Well, you ask these type of questions. So when I realized that they're identical in their structure and their strategy, it further it further clarified for me the magnitude of sales. So it's
Yeah,
interesting how I came to sales through motivational interviewing, because you're dealing with people, right?
yeah,
So all of that is integrated into all of our classes. I'm on Facebook as Alex Edward. Edward's my middle name, so I just keep it stealthy on Facebook. Instagram, Alex Earl DC. Midwest Rehabilitation Institute is on Instagram as well at Midwest Rehab. You can follow our clinic if you'd like. We're putting stuff out occasionally. So Active Health and Restoration is our clinic. But yeah, I'm not super active on social media, but I do enjoy it, and it's something that I'm kind of leaning into. But I'm glad to answer any questions. If people want to email me, they can email me aearl@mwri.co. I'd be glad to expand further on my story, my journey, the process, the framework that I kind of went through to leave Illinois for Tennessee.
brilliant, amazing. Alex, you're an absolute star. I appreciate your time, and it's a great story. It's a very inspiring one, and I hope that's what people take from this. That there is a lot of people making their way, living this type of life. And for anybody listening who thinks this is a scary kind of road and it's only happening to them, well, it is a little scary. It's a little bit spooky, but it's even more scary if you try to do it on your own. And kind of bringing people like Alex, and there's numerous people in the group who've done something like this to to the sort of world, if you like, to hear their story is hopefully inspiring you to do the same. Right, so fantastic. Alex, you're amazing. Thank you guys again. Just a quick one, ppmlive22.com, the big event in Orlando. And we're tentatively thinking about Sydney in January. If you want to let me know, email the team, paul@paulgough.com. If you're listening to this, you're in the New Zealand, Australia kind of area, even, dare I say it, Singapore, Bali, Kuala Lumpur. We've got people all over the world. Where did we have? Brunei. If you're over that side of the world and you're interested in doing something together, I'm thinking about heading out to Sydney in January. So let me know, get in touch, and we'll put some dates together and let you know what the whole thing will be about. If we have enough interest, we'll head over to Sydney to do something in January 2023. So Alex, you're a star. Thanks everybody. Macy again, and the team in the office. Thank you very much. And I'll see you all soon for another episode of the podcast. Well done, guys. See you soon.